What's up, everybody? It's Kevin Eastman, Peter Laird's favorite nerd, and today we are looking at the new 1/6 scale Ninja Turtles. This is on loan to me from someone, my friend, my man of mystery, who prefers not to be mentioned, so I won't mention him. It is Christmas Eve. I'm trying to knock out, this is my last review. I've done 8 reviews in the past 2 days because I wanted to have Christmas at home and not have any. I'm just the type of guy where if I got stuff that I need to do, like I can't relax, I can't focus on anything until it's done. So with this being done, I can actually kick my feet up for the holiday, chill out. I'm looking very forward to it. I've been working so much though. Just a second ago, my wife came downstairs, and I was pretty sure I was getting ready to hear it. Like, I was pretty sure. And it wasn't. You know what it was? She brought me a glass of wine, said Merry Christmas. I was like, how about that? It's a Christmas miracle. Accessory-wise, of course, he comes with 2 of his classic swords, kind of painted in the comic book fashion with the gold and red. There is a slight wash applied to the red that I'm not sure was totally necessary, but the same wash is applied to the gold, and it does look good. And then the sword blade is actually done clean. Sword, rather. And, yeah, they look good, and they fit in his hands and his scabbards and stuff. We'll do that in a second. You get 2 of those. You get this blaster. I'm not sure if he used this or not. This is when they went in the 2nd or 3rd volume of the comics, I think, when they went into space with the Triceratons or whatever. And it has a silver finish throughout, which looks good. It's actually 2 different shades of silver. There's one shade on this, and then the inside barrel is a lighter silver, and then it's painted black, and it's a wash, I think, that's painted throughout, and it really brings out this line. It gives it that comic book look, which is cool. This silver stuff on the black on the back looks a little shoddy. But other than that, it's a fair take on it. He gets one of these like little grappling hook numbers, and this thing is all tied up nicely, and I'm not going to risk messing up the rope or anything. But it has the same silver finish, and you know it looks like what it should look like. And then I think my favorite accessories are these little fellas. So you get a little turtle, and the shell has a wash, so it gives it a little bit of shadow, and then the eyes are painted. The chest is painted with the yellow. It gets a little bit on the arms from time to time, so that's a bit of a bummer, but outside of that it works pretty well, and the whole thing is washed and has a really good likeness. And I think, like, you know, one will come with each turtle, and then you get the Splinter with him, obviously, so you could have, it's like 2 displays for the price of one if you're thinking about it pragmatically. And then, of course, the Splinter. Once again, this is a single cast as well, but it has a brown wash on the fur. Really brings out those details. And then the tail is painted, and it looks like he's doing a little bit of kung fu action, teaching the turtles. And he's got some ninjutsu, I guess. Black paint on the eyes and nose. It's like a more glossy paint, so it brings, like, with the reflection of the lights and stuff, it gives it that very marbled look, which looks cool. So it's a cool accessory. This is thoughtful. This isn't the type of stuff that a lot of people do in regard to accessories, and it's something that really pays out. He has the alternate comic book styled head. Same sort of paint detailings. It looks like an airbrush effect on the green shadows around the eyebrow and the nose piece, and then the teeth are painted white with the black paint in between, and then the black outline around the eyes and some deep shadows in that red, and then the bandana swivels in the back as well, and then we have the wash throughout. So a really good likeness, and very thoughtful to do both. Some people like the Eastman and Laird style in the colored mask. I'm not sure why. I think that red across the board is the way to do it if you're doing this way aesthetically. Like, go all in. But if they were going to include the blue, I'm glad they also included the red. And then you get 3 additional hands, 2 Ninja Claw hands, like just climbing a wall. Same sort of stylings that we'll look at on the hands when we get to them, but the brown is painted on, and then there's a black ring around the base of the claws, and the claws have the silver finish, and they're done well enough. And then 1 pointing hand, which is good. It's nice to have a little bit of posing options when it comes to this kind of stuff, so I appreciate that. And you can see the articulation. This is where it plugs in, and then it'll swivel here, and then it hinges in and out. No up and down hinges, so that's a bit of a bummer, but something is better than nothing, I suppose. And then lastly, he seems to come with 4 throwing stars, 2 of these all silver, and then 2 of these black with the silver outline. But they're in this packaging so tight that I don't want to risk damaging them, so I'm going to leave them in here. I imagine they're just fine. If they're a deal breaker for you, watch another review. But outside of that, I'll be honest. It's kind of hard to get some of this stuff out of all of this. Like, it's really in there. Most of the plastic is like a soft plastic that we'll get to here in a second. But it's still, I was very stressed out taking the swords out and stuff. So something to keep your eyes on. As you can see, he holds them just fine. It is a bit difficult to get them into his fingers. I definitely suggest using a hot air gun or something, or a blow dryer to kind of heat up, because it is a tight fit. But I mean, they're definitely not going anywhere. You see me moving the forearm around as I'm moving the sword, so it's definitely not going anywhere. And the one fits in the back just fine. I don't know about the grappling hook, but I assume that it fits fine. But it's all wound up, and I'm not going to risk any damage to the rope or anything. So we'll assume. But you know what they say about assumptions. But who cares? It's Christmas. Well, not for you guys. It's like a week later. Everybody's probably over it by now, to be fair. But at the moment, I'm pretty excited. Alright, so let's do it like Pruitt used to do it, if you know what I mean. The head is on a ball joint, and the other head just pops right on. Now, this is a little obnoxious, because it just sort of sits on there. I mean, it's on there, but it's not like it's that difficult to take off. It's just tension. Now, there is a gift and a curse to that, so it is obnoxious in one sense, but in the other sense, like, you can get some pretty extreme poses out of it that can be, like, fairly comical or whatever. Like, it could pay off with Michelangelo, for instance. And not to say that it couldn't pay off with this guy, it's just, you don't necessarily think of, like, extreme goofy poses or whatever with this fella. Anyway, the mask detailings and the head detailings are exactly the same, except swap the blue in for red, and everything else is identical, so I'm not going to take too much time with that. But I will show you articulation-wise how that ball joint works. You can get down to there, up to there, and then side to side, and the swivel. So, works fine. Another ball peg from the neck into the head, into the torso rather, would have been appreciated, especially for a figure of this size. Now, the turtle skin, let's talk about that one time, we'll do it and get it out of the way, has this wash. It's all over. Sometimes it looks like he's dirty, sometimes it fills in the shadows. The neck is a good example of where it looks like it's filling in the shadows. The biceps here is a good example of where it just looks like he's living in the sewer life. But it is throughout, including the torso, the middle section here, and even on the joints themselves, a lot of them, like these down here. So at least it's thorough in that regard. For the shoulders, they're on disc ball hinges, like a Marvel Legend, so disc hinges rather, so you can get them up to there, so just about 90 degrees. And then I have noticed this, like, it's a softer plastic, and as I've been manipulating them, like, you can pull some of these joints out, so be mindful of that. And then you get the swivel, bicep swivel at both ends, elbow, and then that swivels as well. It's single jointed, and it gets you just about 90 degrees, so I think that's fine. Wrist swivel, and then hinge, like we've already talked about. The brown detailings are the same throughout. It's just brown painted on the green plastic and then washed with that same color wash. That's the same everywhere. This piece here that holds his scabbards, that's a separate piece that appears to be glued on to me, but I can't really tell. And then it has the wash and has a little darker shade of brown painted on some of these latches and stuff. These are actually quite nice, and the material feels good too. I'd like to see them do figures in this material, because some of this is like a softer plastic, which is not hateful, it's just, I don't know, feels a little strange at this size. And then it has a nice wash on it, some nice sculpt work. And then these are on these sliding pieces here, so you can kind of adjust them to your liking. So you can have one, it's like some people like one higher up than the other. Anyway, I just thought that was thoughtful and cool and a nice little design aspect. The turtle shell itself is just washed. It's a heavy wash in these creases, so in the recesses it does look like it's shadowed, so that works just fine. Articulation for the other arm is the same. I'm just going to take this head off for now. And it's the same, it's fine. And then there's nothing really for the waist. Like, they could have put a joint in there, and they just didn't. So that's a bit of a bummer. This is the best painted piece on the piece, and that's this stomach chest section. It's the same wash. They applied the same tactics. It's just this has the sculpt that's going to present that a lot better. So it hides in those recesses well. There's a lot of little nicks and nooks and crannies and all that kind of stuff around the edges, so it all fills in nicely, gives a nice effect. We're going to follow that up with the worst aspect of this figure, which is not the tail, which is underneath here and does swivel, oddly enough. This is comic book accurate, if you're curious. They didn't just add that in for good times. Underneath here we have disc hinged, basically wide jointed disc hinges for hips. A lot of older Marvel Legends had this type of hips. The Hulk that was in that 3-pack from Marvel Legends had this style of hip. It is not my favorite. I don't care for it at all. It is efficient, it is effective in its own right, but it doesn't give you the same sort of freedom that a ball joint or a universal joint does. So it acts like a universal, it just doesn't perform like one. So it allows you to get, if you swivel it here, it's tight too. Some of this is tight and some of this is really loose. Out to about here. The thigh swivel is built into the bottom. This one is incredibly loose. Now, if you want it to, that's front and back, right? If you want it out to the side, you have to rotate it at its base and make sure the hinge is facing outward, and then you can get it out to about there. So it's about 45 degrees both ways. That swivel is done a lot better tolerance-wise. This one is loosey-goosey. This joint in general is a bit on the loose side. It definitely falls apart from here to here. So our other problem are these double jointed knees, which range-wise work quite well. Sculpt-wise, it's a bit silly. There is a silver lining though, so stay tuned. This is the problem. It's this lower knee joint. That looks stupid. Like, can you imagine the skeletal structure there? It looks ridiculous. But if you just use the top one, I mean, obviously that doesn't look great, but it does look a little bit better. Now, if you just use a little bit of both, it's not so bad. But if you're going for some sort of extreme pose, I don't know. That bottom joint does look really wonky. It just looks like it just looks so disproportionate as to where the knee pads are in relation to where the skeletal structure of the figure would be. Anyway, thigh swivel we mentioned, no other swivels in there. For the feet, we have a hinged peg system, much like a Marvel Legend. So you get up about the smallest bit, like that's about neutral, and it goes to about there. You do get a fair bit back though, so that's nice. No toe hinge, you would have thought they would have one of those as well. And then where it does peg into the foot, it does rotate, so that's the kind of how it works out the rocker. It's not the best. It works on a Marvel Legend, but it's a little obnoxious on a figure this big, but it does do its job. And that is this figure in a nutshell. So a fair amount of good and bad here. Sorry, I had to cut back in. I couldn't control myself. Not only is it this figure in a nutshell, it's also this figure in a half shell, am I right? I don't have any other 1/6 scale figures to compare it to size-wise, but there is NECA's take on the comic book sort of aesthetic on Leonardo. It is interesting. Like, you know, the NECA really went for the comic book look, like with the line work and everything. And I don't think that would have worked in this 1/6 scale, but there are things that kind of work in NECA's favor on the 1/6 scale regard. Well, in the 1/12 scale regard, that don't necessarily translate well to the 1/6 scale, but I think we're going to get to that in Final Thoughts. Final Thoughts wise, huge mixed bag here. So let's talk about the negatives. Minor negatives, like, you know, there's a really tight tolerance in getting all the weapons in the hands and stuff, but it's easily overcome if you just heat it up a little bit, so let's not hold too much of that against them. The big issue here is really articulation. No waist swivel or any sort of crunch or any sort of ball joint in that middle section. The Y ball disc joints, which are just terrible. It's just my least favorite way to do hips. I'm just not a fan. Also, I mean, this figure's huge, so you would think that you would have the ability to really interchange it with some different engineering here and there to kind of make it look good, and it kind of relies on very simple engineering, and as a result, like, I've seen companies do more with less, and that's kind of a bummer. I think that it shouldn't be pegged, swiveled, single hinge hands. I just think it should do more. I think the elbows should do more. I think the knees should look better. I think there's a number of things here that should be done better for the side. That being said, the sculpt is beautiful. The paint, fantastic. The materials are fair. The size is good, and it does have a strong presence. You can't get very dynamic poses out of them, but in simple poses, if you were to get all four, I think you'd be completely satisfied to represent the Eastman Laird style turtles on a shelf and be done. I think it's fine. It's just I've seen better. I think the NECA ones kind of did it better. I think the SH Figuarts did it better. And I think the other thing that I think is worth not noticing, but I noticed it, so it's worth noting. There it is this. This is a 1/6 scale figure, and it doesn't have as strong of a presence as I feel like it should. Like, if this was a 1/12 scale figure, I think it'd be amazing. But, like, I just looked at that 1/4 Donatello, and that thing presents hardcore. This one, not so much. This one's kind of fair. in terms of how it presents. But I think if you get all four, I think you'll be satisfied. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, I think the bigger the figures get, the more kind of realistic you expect them. And I know they're going for the comic book look, but I think there's even a more mature way you could have maybe painted this. Like, it's just the wash all over doesn't quite do it. Like the way they did the stomach and the shell and like the scabbards and stuff, that all works wonderfully. But some of the textures of the skin, I think they could have added a little bit more and had a bigger payoff. Overall, though, still a fairly quality product, and I'm very fortunate and very appreciative for the opportunity to take a look at it. So I'd like to see what Mondo does in the future. This isn't a deal breaker by any means. It's just, I think there is room for improvement. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.